Stage is set for the conference championships in the NFL, and the national championship in downtown ATL is happening tonight. Two teams remain in the national championship game. Ohio State and Notre Dame, like I said before, they're playing tonight. And 4 teams remain in the NFL playoffs. Conference championship week is next week on Sunday. Who will emerge victorious and who will be bitter and devastated and heartbroken at defeat? Only one way to find out. Tune into the national championship tonight and tune into next Sunday for the conference championship games. But first, we must backtrack to the divisional round of the playoffs. And backtrack even further to my division rankings. Those are exactly what's going to happen in this episode of Grizzly Talks Football. I'm the Grizz, and welcome to another episode. Like I said before, we have NFL divisional round reactions along with reactions to my NFL division rankings. Spoiler, they sucked. Again, if you are new to this series, I will make sure to leave a link in the description with the entire playlist of every episode so that you're all caught up and you'll also have it for future episodes whenever I post them, at least for this season. I feel like I'm going to post a season 2 as well. Don't forget to hit the red subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you don't miss a single one of my videos. So, without further delay, let's get to the divisional round reactions. Up first, this is Saturday games. 2 of them on Saturday, 2 of them on Sunday in the divisional round. First up, Kansas City Chiefs, the 1 seed of the AFC, takes care of business against the Houston Texans 23-14. But I gotta say, Andy Reid, that safety could cost people a lot of money, so I would watch your back if I were you. But seriously, Houston, what the hell was that? You outgained Kansas City by 100 plus yards, and you still lost this game because you couldn't put up any points to really show for. Well, you put up 14, but you didn't put enough. As they always say, points are so much more important than yards when you get the W. Like, as far as the offense is concerned, there were some really outstanding performances other than one person. Definitely not Patrick Mahomes, 180 yards and a touchdown, despite the amount of times that Tony Romo and Chris Collinsworth want to fucking glaze this guy. Kareem Hunt had 50 yards. He was literally the only productive guy on the rushing game. He scored a touchdown. Say thank you to Travis Kelce with his 7 catches, 120 yards and a score. Can't forget the defense either. They had a total of 8 sacks, including 3 from George Karlaftis. Oh yeah, and fun fact, this guy is 23 years old. I'm not joking. Look his freaking age up. He is 23. Kansas City's defense has a bright future if they decide to keep him. I really hope they don't, but if he stays with the Chiefs, the defense is going to look pretty good. Harrison Butker made all his kicks. He made 3 field goals, 2 extra points for a total of 11 points. Unlike somebody. Oh yes, cannot forget Nico Remigio. He is a return man for Fresno State. He had a 63 or 68 yard return to start the game. And then one of the Houston special teamers got an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty that put Kansas City at the Houston 13-yard line to start the game. I want to ask, how the hell did Kansas City get held to a field goal in that play? But that wasn't even the entire story. It's Houston that's been the entire story. All those yards, 250 yards, 1928. We got Joe Mixon, almost 100 yards, rushing and a touchdown. Like, this is what I mean. Like, points matter so much more than yards if you score enough points to get a W. Like, Nico Collins had 81 yards, Dalton Schultz 63, Xavier Hutchinson 52. Like, CJ Stroud had 250 yards but had no touchdowns. Will Anderson, despite a roughing the passer penalty that was very controversial, had 2 sacks in his game, a total of 3 for the defense. Like, the defense didn't do that bad. Offense just could not score points. And there's one guy to blame for this, Kymie Fairbairn. This guy missed 2 field goals and an extra point. One of those field goals that he missed was blocked. But it seems like when Houston gets into enemy territory, they just can't seem to really break through and score a touchdown. They scored 1 touchdown all game from Joe Mixon. And even when they get stalled out on 3rd down, Kymie Fairbairn doesn't take advantage of that and he keeps on missing kicks. I really just don't understand that these kickers, take so long at practicing their kicking motion and practicing their angle and where they want to kick, yet they still miss these damn kicks. Like, what the hell is going on with this NFL this season? But congrats, Kansas City. Good luck in the AFC Championship game. It's at home against Buffalo. What? What the fuck? Like, is this a literal joke? Is this an actual joke? No, it's not. It's not April. It's not April Fool's. This team just choked. But holy hell, Washington Commanders. Good lord, you won 45-31 against the 1 seed of the NFC. Pulled off the upset, and you are going to the NFC Championship for the first time since 1991. Wow. All I could say is, unbelievable, Detroit. You fumbled the bag. Big time. But here's the caveat. You can't win big games if you're not going to have a good defense performance. This team, Detroit team, led by defensive coordinator Eric Glenn, did not have a good game at all. Jane Daniels, 300 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. Brian Robinson, 80 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns, with an extra touchdown from McNichols. Touchdown passes were to Terry McLaurin and Zach Ertz, with Diami Brown almost having 100 receiving yards. But that's not the biggest story. Washington's defense had 5 turnovers. They forced 5 turnovers on Detroit. 2 sacks from Dorrance Armstrong, 4 interceptions, 1 forced fumble that was returned. Oh, no, sorry. No, there was a pick 6. There was also a forced fumble on Jared Goff. I believe Quan Martin was the one who had a pick 6, then 2 interceptions for Shane Ristol and 1 for Jeremy Chin. This defense fired on all cylinders this game. But seriously, what in the hell happened, Detroit? Like, what happened? Like, seriously, what happened? You just got outplayed, outcoached, outwitted by Washington. Jared Goff, 1 touchdown, 3 picks. Jason Williams also threw an interception, 300 yards for Goff. There was also 2 touchdowns and 100 yards for Jahmyr Gibbs. He had a very spectacular game. James Williams also had a 61-yard rushing touchdown. Jared, you wasted Jahmyr Gibbs' great performance for this. And I'm talking about you too, defense. Monroe St. Brown, 8 catches, 137 yards. The only touchdown pass went to Sam Laporta. And you want to know how many turnovers this defense forced? 0. It's just a big fat 0, and they didn't get a single sack as well. Hey, shout out to Alex Anzalone for 12 tackles. But still, this was pathetic. Oh yeah, and in the second quarter alone, Washington scored 28 points. What's the actual hell? Jayden Daniels has now taken the crown from C.J. Stroud for pretty much the best rookie season in recent memory, maybe of all time. He has now led his team, the Washington Commanders, to the NFC Championship game against a division rival. Unreal. Oh yeah, Dan Campbell, remember when you said that you'll see the Vikings in 2 weeks? Yeah, you are going to see them in 2 weeks. In Cancun. And now on to the Sunday games. We had the 4-seed Rams come up short against the 2-seed Philadelphia Eagles out of the NFC 28-22. The Rams made this closer than everybody was expecting. I will say, the Rams were a scary team this postseason to play against. But let's be honest, the passing really doesn't matter because this was the Saquon show all game. 8 yards a carry, 200 yards, 2 touchdowns for Saquon. Jalen Hurts had a long rushing touchdown as well, but I don't think anybody really cared. Well, maybe a select few. 4 sacks for the Eagles defense, including 2 from the guy we should have picked in 2023, Jalen Carter. Look, I like Bijan. I'm proud that he's on our team, but we should have had Jalen Carter. We needed defense more than anything. Terry! But yeah, this Eagles team is going to be hard to stop. Unless you're the Kansas City Chiefs, of course. Oh yeah, and how about Jake Elliott missing PATs but making field goals? Like, what? Matt Stafford threw 324 yards, 2 touchdowns. Kyron Williams had 100 rushing yards on the game, but unfortunately, no touchdowns for him. 2 touchdowns went to Tyler Higbee and Colby Parkinson. 2 tight ends getting touchdowns now, with Puka Nacua getting almost 100 yards receiving on 6 catches. You know what the funniest part is? is that the Rams actually had 7 sacks themselves, including 2 from potentially Defensive Rookie of the Year this year, Jared Verse. Defenses both looked extremely solid. It's just which offense was going to come to play the most. It ended up being Saquon and the Eagles. Good try, LA. You did your best, but unfortunately it just wasn't good enough. Good luck, Philadelphia, against Washington. In the final divisional round matchup, we got the Bills edging out the Ravens at the end of the game, 27-25. Came down to a 2-point conversion that was supposed to tie it up, but it was dropped. Just like the Ravens dropped their season down in the toilet with those 2 bad blunders by not only Lamar Jackson, but also Andrews. People blame Andrews for this entire game, but if Lamar Jackson didn't have those couple turnovers, they would have been ahead. Much like Philadelphia, the passing game for the Bills wasn't really important because there were 3 rushing touchdowns in this game. 1 for Ray Davis and 2 for Josh Allen. No touchdown passes, but Khalil Shakir led the receiving by a landslide. 2 sacks for the Bills defense, along with an interception and a forced fumble with recovery by Von Miller. There was another one by someone I actually don't remember. But yeah, they had 2 fumble recoveries on defense. Bills defense showed up, rushing game showed up. This was a dogfight, but it ended up being, and who can endure more? It was Buffalo. 2 touchdowns, 2 turnovers, 250 yards for Lamar Jackson. King Henry, 84 rushing yards in his score. 2 touchdowns went to Isaiah Likely and Rashad Bateman. And let me tell you something, they give Mark Andrews so much shit, but he has done so well when he was on the Ravens. Well, other than the earlier seasons, but still. Mark Andrews has been a very solid tight end. He's been a top 5 tight end for a couple years now. Put some respect on his name. It was one fucking game that he did shit, despite having a solid stat line. Give him a break. There's other factors that are to be blamed for this. Lamar Jackson's interception, a fumble, for example. Only 1 sack as well. No turnovers for the Ravens defense at all. Yeah, you can also blame the defense as well. What comes around, Baltimore. Fortunately, you are going to be sitting on your couch while the Buffalo Bills travel to Arrowhead to play the Chiefs in the AFC Championship. 4 teams remain in the NFL playoffs. Who will go to the Super Bowl and who will go home crying? Well, if the Chiefs win, everybody will be crying, but you know what I'm saying. But anyways, let's get to these NFL division rankings. Oh gosh, I am not excited for this. Ladies and gentlemen, the moment you've been waiting for. You guys have been waiting for me to react to my division rankings, and yet, here we are. And from the looks of this looks terrible. Let me tell you that. Let's just get this started and let's get this over with. First up, we got the AFC North. Incorrect prediction, of course, was the Pittsburgh Steelers being dead last. In my defense, I had no clue on what Justin Fields and Russell Wilson were going to do on the Pittsburgh Steelers, since I heard about Russell Wilson's injury as well. However, when Justin Fields played, he was red hot, especially in the rushing game. When Russell Wilson came back from his injury, he bettered the passing game, and he was actually pretty solid for most of the season. Fortunately for them, they had a little bit of a collapse at the end, where they ultimately lost to the division rival in the wildcard game. I thought this division was going to be competitive between all 4 teams, but apparently it was just 3. Cleveland, you got a lot of explaining to do right now. For some reason, I thought Deshaun Watson is going to be miles better than what he was last year. My gosh, he was actually even worse this year than he was last year. And he's now had 3 Achilles tears in 2 seasons. Great job, Cleveland. Great job, Jimmy Haslam. I hope you had your best investment of all time on this guy because he sucked. I'm actually not even mad that I put the Browns at 3rd because, man, they were awful. Which takes me to my second place team, which was the Cincinnati Bengals. Let me tell you something right now. If the Bengals didn't lose to the Patriots at the start of the season, this team would have made the playoffs, 100%. But then again, the Broncos had the head-to-head. Actually, no. Bengals had the head-to-head. They would have made it playoffs because of their head-to-head victory against Denver. But yeah, their defense was terrible. Offense was outstanding. Unfortunately, you need both units to be a very good unit to be in the playoffs and be contenders. And of course, my only correct prediction was the Ravens being in first place in the AFC North. I mean, come on, people were expecting it. Like, Derrick Henry was on that team. He was going to make that team's rushing attack even better, and he did just that. Like, he was just shy of 2,000 yards this season. He actually was very solid in the run game. People thought Lamar Jackson was going to take his carries, but that was not the case at all. Pass defense did struggle, but the rushing defense was very solid at least. Unfortunately, the AFC North is out of the playoffs, so at the end, it doesn't really matter. Up next, we got the AFC South with, oh boy, we got two predictions that were correct. Tennessee Titans in dead last to start. I mean, I knew the Titans were going to suck. Like, I just had a bad feeling that Will Levis was going to struggle in his second season. And I was right. He got benched multiple times for Mason Rudolph. Will Levis did have a few solid games, but it just wasn't enough to really change their minds or mine. Defense was at least a solid unit, but the offensive struggles were just too much for them to overcome. And I had the Indianapolis Colts at 3. Yeah, this was actually incorrect for some reason. I'm not even that mad. Anthony Richardson was just very inconsistent. Like, nobody knew how he was going to do in his second season. I thought he was going to be very average. Turns out he was worse. By the way, I know my face cam is very small. They can see me down there. Hello. But, yeah, I need to work on that. I'm trying not to cover up these 32 teams, but it's kind of difficult to do so. But anyways, Jonathan Taylor was spectacular. Defense was very solid. It's just the quarterback position was just completely disoriented. Like, it had to bench Anthony Richardson. Joe Flacco started a couple games. He had some good ones, but then he had some very bad ones. Just the story of the Colts this season. Just way too inconsistent on offense. And oh gosh, I had the Jags in second. How in the hell did they get so bad? Even with Trevor Lawrence, they sucked. Like, defense took a major step back. Like, and receiving core, like, I'm very hopeful that Brian Thomas becomes an elite receiver. Travis Etienne sucked, so Team Bixby had to carry the load. He almost had 1,000 yards rushing. But man, this team fell from grace big time. And of course, you got the division winner, Houston Texans. I mean, are we even surprised? Unfortunately, not as good of a season as I thought they would have, but still, they made the playoffs as the division winner, and that's really all that matters when it comes down to these rankings. Up next, we had the AFC East. Oh boy, this was bad. New England at last. I expected that. I think everybody expected that. That roster is horrible. There are some bright spots. Drake May is one of them. Ramondre Stevenson, sometimes. Defense can be a little bit better. Receiving core needs to be bolstered up. Like, it's literally just Hunter Henry and nobody else. Sometimes DeMario Douglas, but really, who cares about him, really? Oh my gosh, I didn't even know we hit the Bills in third. I didn't even think that Josh Allen was going to play that well with such a bad receiving core, but if I learned anything, if you have an elite quarterback, they're going to make that receiving core look at least decent. In fact, he made him look good, and the defense I thought was going to regress a ton after everything they lost. Turns out, they actually got good. And speaking of the receiving core, the fact that they released Stephon Diggs, I thought was going to hurt this team quite more significantly. Actually, they were better off without him. Stephon Diggs was actually kind of a tumor on that team, and they got rid of him, and that really saved their entire franchise. Good for you, Josh, and good for you, Buffalo and Sean McDermott. Up next, we had the Jets. I'm very glad that I didn't put the Jets in first place. I put the Dolphins in first place for some stupid reason. But yeah, Jets sucked. Like, Aaron Rodgers was not the same player as he was in his prime when he was winning MVPs left and right. Yeah, like, they weren't much better with him than they were last year with Zach Wilson. Let me say that. The Jets are literally where quarterbacks go to die, and of course it's also Carolina, unless you're Bryce Young apparently. Defense regressed somehow, and receiving core, I mean, it still has bright spots like Garrett Wilson, but it's almost like it's the New York Packers almost. This team just sucked flat out. Bottom line. And finally, we have the Dolphins at first. Yeah, like, they had a winning record. Tua got hurt. Like, Buffalo still owns the Dolphins, and same can be said for Kansas City owning the Bills, but they could reverse that. Buffalo can if they beat the Chiefs in the AFC Championship and go to the Super Bowl. But yeah, Miami still can't beat Buffalo, and they still can't, well, they didn't make the playoffs, but they did it last year, but they had to run into the frozen tundra known as Arrowhead Stadium last year. I thought maybe this team would actually be a lot better. Unfortunately, they got worse than they did last season. Tua, yeah, you just start sliding more. Defense was solid for the most part. Unfortunately, the fact that Tua missed so much time really did hurt the Dolphins organization because quarterbacks after Tua sucked. Devon Achane was nice. Jonnu Smith had a good season. Tyreek Hill's on his way out. Like, it's just become a disaster now for Miami. Up next, we got the AFC West. One of my closest predictions yet. First off, I had the Raiders in dead last. Yeah, this was coming from a mile away. Rushing game, ass. Receiving core, decent. Like, you have an elite tight end, Brock Bowers, but what does this say for Michael Myers? But also, Jacoby Myers is also one to really look out for. Trey Tucker is a very sneaky one as well. And the quarterback situation, it's not looking good. They have 3 quarterbacks across this entire season. Gardner Minshew, AOC, and Desmond Ridder. Yep, former Falcon went to the Raiders. This team was just a disaster from the start on offense. At least their defense looked okay. But the 3 best teams in the AFC West all made the playoffs. For some reason, I had the Chargers in 3rd. I figured they would make the playoffs, but not as a 5 seed. Jim Harbaugh did an amazing job of rebuilding this team. Defense is one of the best in the league. Offense have some holes that they need to figure out. Lamb McConkey looks like a beast. Their best receiver literally is built like a slot receiver, though. You need to get another one that is like 6'2", 6'3", and can play ball. J.K. Dobbins was good until he got injured, but he had some solid stats. Like, Gus Edwards didn't play much. Justin Herbert looks, he's above average at best this season, but he's still, I believe, a top 10 quarterback in the league. Not much really else to say. Most of these teams have like good defenses, but their offense turns out ruining their season. That was the case in the wildcard game against Houston for LA. Up next, the surprise team of this entire AFC was the Denver Broncos, in my opinion. Like, nobody expected them to even compete for a wildcard spot. I was a believer. Oh yeah, I was one from the very beginning. He had a rough start, but then he started to fit in with the system a little bit more, and he started playing well. And he actually played decent in the wild card game. I think this team has a bright future. They just need to get a rushing game because that department sucked all year. Defense is a top 3 unit in the league, hands down. Offensive line could use some work. Receiving core, like, if you could get another receiver that's elite on the opposite side of Cortland Sutton, this league could be in trouble, the AFC West rather. But yeah, nobody was beating the Chiefs for the first place division title. The way that they won it though, I don't think anybody expected that. 15-2, of course they would. I thought maybe they would be just a little bit worse, but they proved me wrong time and time again. But please, Buffalo, do not let these guys fucking three-peat. I mean, come on. Kansas City was the runaway winner of this division, and everybody saw it coming. Obviously, statistically, one of the worst seasons of Patrick Mahomes' career. 26 touchdowns, 11 picks, almost 4,000 yards. But his team won games. That's really all that matters. Special teams and defense were really to blame for that. Kansas City's defense had some young studs on there. Nick Bolton, Karlaftis. You also had veterans like Chris Jones out there. That defense looks elite. It's going to be hard to move the ball against them. Let's hope Buffalo has enough juice to be able to do it. And now we're on to the NFC, kicking things off with the North. Oh boy. Yeah, this was one of my only ones with 0. I had 2 divisions with 0 correct. I had the Vikings in last. Like, no one expected Sam Darnold to have an MVP level season and then collapse the last 2 games of the season for Minnesota. But other than those 2 games, Sam Darnold was actually looking very solid. Like, Justin Jefferson had a quarterback he could throw to, who could throw him the ball, really. My main question for this offseason is, are they going to keep Sam Darnold or are they going to risk playing J.J. McCarthy as their starting quarterback? Because remember, the only reason Sam Darnold was the starter was because J.J. got injured in the preseason. Defense was one of the best in the league. Like, holy hell, no one expected Minnesota to go as far as they did. Like, 14-3 as a 5 seed? That is unbelievable. This division was just loaded with talent. I had the Bears in 3rd. I mean, who else would have expected that? Like, I had Bears behind the Lions and Packers at least, so I'm not mad at that. But, yeah, this team sucked. Bears turned Caleb Williams into Derek Carr first season. Eberflus was fired. Thomas Brown finally got a win against the Green Bay Packers. But he still sucked as the interim coach. Defense looks very solid. It's just, if the offense can be a little bit more consistently good, I think this team can go very far. But then again, it's the Bears. They're really not going to have very nice things at all. And oh my gosh, Detroit in 2nd? What the hell was I thinking? What the hell was I smoking? This team was 15-2, yet lost in the divisional round. How the hell does that even happen? Jared Goff, besides the games they have 5 interceptions and 4 turnovers, then in the divisional round against the Commanders and that one game against the Texans, he's been very solid. Dan Campbell was a great coach. He might be a front runner for Coach of the Year, unless KOC has something to say about that. Kevin O'Connell is KOC, for those of you wondering. Defense was one of its best, but the Aiden Hutchinson injury really harmed this defense at an all-time high. This team just didn't execute when it mattered most, and just like that, they're out of the playoffs. And finally, yeah, I'm a clown for putting the Packers at the top of the NFC North. I know. I wasn't expecting Jordan Love to get injured for like 6 games and have Malik Willis having to carry them, but he actually looked decent in the rushing game. He was actually pretty good, but the passing game, he didn't really depend on that too much. Josh Jacobs had an incredible season. Like, the defense was solid. Receiving core had some good numbers. Like, this team was a very complete team that was able to make the postseason. It's just a shame that their magical run ended in Philadelphia. But they still had a solid season. That's like back-to-back seasons without Aaron Rodgers that they have done well. Up next, this was really the only division that I got completely right, technically. It's the NFC South. These 2 teams, the Saints and Panthers, tied for 3rd in the division. Panthers had the tiebreaker, but honestly, I'm counting that as half a point. Panthers at dead last. They were 3rd, but, they struggled early on. Let me just say, the Panthers were better than their record showed. Bryce looks good now for some reason. I don't know how, but he did. I guess benching him was a good idea because when he came back as a starter, he looked like a completely different player. Now get him a good offensive line and a good receiving core. Oh, and don't forget to bolster up that defense because it was the worst in the league. Seriously, fix that defense. New Orleans had 3. Yeah, these 2 were the bottom 2 teams, and it wasn't even a competition. Derek Carr, Alvin Kamara, Chris Olave all were injured at some points of the season, and injuries really demoralized that entire team. Like, Jesus Christ. They lost Marshawn Lattimore to the Commanders. That hurt their secondary. At least Paulson Depot looks solid. But all those aging stars on the Saints of yesteryear are about to start committing retirement, which is going to hurt the New Orleans Saints even more. Oh, and the Saints started collapsing. That's the mood that the Saints fans are in right now. And the top 2 of the division, I expected that very much. I thought this Atlanta team was supposed to be a playoff team, but unfortunately, both me and the media were incorrect. Kirk Cousins looked even worse than he had been his entire career. Like, he can't even move out of the pocket. He's turned into Matty Ice 2.0. This guy literally fires panic balls, and it's literally just a weak arm throw. Like, Michael Penix had to play the final 3 games. I think someone said that if Penix played earlier, I think the Falcons would have made the playoffs. Let me say, I kind of agree with that. Kind of, because we don't know how early he would play, and we don't know what kind of performances he would put in those few games that could have happened if he was started a long time ago. Well, the good news of this season is that we beat the Eagles. Yay, I guess. And finally, we got the Bucs in first place. Unfortunately for them, that Chris Godwin injury hurt their entire offense. Injuries were literally the only thing holding this team back, because other than that, this team is literally a divisional round contender, maybe NFC Championship contender. Chris Godwin, some injuries on defense as well, even the offensive line really hurt them entirely. Oh yeah, don't forget Mike Evans, but congratulations on 1,000 receiving yards for the 11th straight year, tying Jerry Rice's record. Great job, man. Defense actually looked very solid for Tampa Bay. It's just the offense without Chris Godwin, they were good, but just not good enough, I guess. And now we are on to the NFC East. Or should I? Nah, I'm just kidding. Start off at the bottom, New York Giants at the bottom of the list. Yep, I was right about that one. New York Giants are just terrible. There's no beating around that bush anymore. They're just horrible. They have the 3rd overall pick now, if I'm concerned. 3 or 4, one of those two. But they could still get a quarterback if the other 2 teams ahead of them don't pick a quarterback, which the likelihood of that is very likely. Defense was serviceable, it's just the offense was awful. Besides Tyrone Tracy and Malik Naders. Devin Singletary is actually kind of an afterthought at this point. Daniel Jones got cut. They had to play either Tommy DeVito or Drew Lock. Drew Lock looked good for like 1 game, and then he fell back down to earth. I hope Drew Lock becomes a good backup in one of the teams that could take him, but I don't think New York's the place that he wants to go right now. Up next, they had the Commanders in 3rd. Wow. This is either determining how good the Commanders were or how bad Dallas was. Because Washington, I do not believe, was supposed to make the NFC Championship in Daniel's first season in the league. Oh yeah, and this is also Dan Quinn's first season with the Commanders. How fitting. First year head coach with the Commanders, and he takes them to the NFC Championship. Remember when Dan Quinn was our coach in his 2nd season? He took us to the Super Bowl, and we haven't been there ever since. But man, Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin on that offense, and especially that defense, was out of this world surprising everybody. This team deserved to be in the playoffs, and everybody knew it. And we were just too blind to realize this was a good team. Up next, I headed Philadelphia in 2nd. Yep, I know, I'm a clown for that one too. I understand they had Saquon on their team, it's just, I felt like if Dak Prescott would have been healthy, I'm very sure Dallas would have beaten Philadelphia once or twice. But sadly, Eagles, Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Saquon Barkley on that offense, along with the offensive line, were just unstoppable. The defense was just absolutely intimidating every single team they played almost. This team was just complete on a different level, and these guys are Super Bowl contenders for sure. And finally, we got Dallas. I know. Oh, yeah, by the way, Nick Sirianni, you're a bitch for not letting Saquon play that last game of the season to get the record. Now we're on to Dallas. If Dak Prescott didn't get hurt, I think this team makes the playoffs. Unfortunately, they had to stick with Cooper Rush for most of the season and 1 game of Trey Lance. And yeah, it did not do well for Dallas fans at all. And now, the Dallas Cowgirls now have the longest drought not making the NFC Championship. Sad to say, because, man, Dallas's long years of dominance have just quickly went out the back view mirror. How are you going to keep Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, and Micah Parsons on the same team? Like, you're probably not going to have enough money to be able to do all that. This team is cooked. Jerry Jones needs to step down. Mike McCarthy is gone. What's going to happen to this Dallas team is anyone's guess. And finally, we got the NFC West. Oh boy, this was completely inaccurate. I wasn't too far off on the Cardinals being dead last. Like, this division wasn't supposed to be, literally toss around, seeing who makes it. It wasn't supposed to be utter chaos. All 4 of these teams had a potential to win this damn division, and 3 of these teams squandered some of those opportunities, if not all opportunities at winning this damn division. Cardinals, they had a bright future at wide receiver Marvin Harrison. It's just Kyler Murray was just not the quarterback that the Cardinals were hoping he would be. He did make the playoffs one time, but that was it. Like, they just slowly fell from grace. And unfortunately, they're either going to have to start exploring other options at QB, or they're going to have to start building around him again. James Conner was a solid running back. Defense was very underrated. This is why I say don't sleep with the Cardinals defense almost every time. Unfortunately, their grit and their fights were just not enough against these powerhouse of teams. Rams at 3rd. Oh boy. Yeah, this was awful. I didn't think that the Rams would turn from injury-prone, missing the playoffs, to division winners that made the NFC divisional round, let alone made the game close with the Eagles. Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp got injured early into the season, but when they came back, they were just a lot better than they were. Cooper Kupp, he's kind of an afterthought at the moment because Puka Nacua is stealing all the shine. But that defense, I completely disrespected you, and I apologize for that. Jared Verse and Braden Fisk were some great defensive line pickups for the Rams in the draft, and defensive backs were very solid. Linebackers may need some work, but this defense was very, very solid. And I do apologize to the Rams for disrespecting their defense because they were actually pretty good. Next up was my only correct pick in this division, Seattle Seahawks being 2nd. They went 10-7 and still missed the playoffs. Sad. Geno Smith had a good season. It's just he's getting to his age where it's how much does he have left? That's the only problem with this team because Kenneth Walker and Charbonnet are a great running back duo. Justice Smith-Njigba and DK Metcalf are a solid 1-2 punch at receiver. Lockett is a slot. Defense has some good pieces around them. They just need to get some more elite pieces that will help them win the division in the future. And finally, this team, the San Francisco team, went from division favorites and Super Bowl contenders to dead last in the division. I was not expecting, I don't think anybody was expecting Christian McCaffrey to only play 5-6 games? Just to get hurt again. Brock Purdy looked like a shell of his former self in his past 2 years that he's been with San Francisco. Defense has looked solid, but they've been injured. So has the offense. Ayuk and Deebo Samuel have been injured. Jawan Jennings and George Kittle were literally the 2 main guys for that team. I feel so bad for 49ers fans because their injuries really screwed them royally. This is just like 2020. That's all the NFL division predictions, and yeah, call me a clown in the comments, please. I'll take it on any day. That's going to be it for this episode of Grizzly Talks Football. If you enjoyed it, make sure you smash that like button, hit the red subscribe button down there, hit the notification bell so you don't miss a single one of my videos. This is the Grizz, and that's all from me, and until next time, I'll see you guys later. See you in the National Championship reactions. Peace.